Welcome back to Kids Planning. I'm Allison. This is Daniel.
We're the Kids Planning parents, and today we're asking the question, can kids play?
Role player.
So today we're talking about Role Player from Thunderworks Games. And basically the gist of this game is you are rolling dice and using the dice that you roll to build your characters on these boards. So the dice fit into these slots, and you are using the dice to figure out your value of your different attributes like strength, dexterity, concentration, wisdom, int, and cha. So at the beginning of each round, you rotate who rolls, but the players roll the dice and then they put them in the marketplace up here from lowest to highest, and then players go around and they take a dice that they want to use and use it on their board to build their character.
And then they can go and take the money that they get throughout the game and purchase in the marketplace other weapons or roles or traits, or it's not roles, it's traits and skills.
And the order in which you get to pick your cards is determined by whoever picks the lowest dice gets to pick first, and the highest gets to pick last.
Yep.
Basically, you have these different characters, and they have different goals that you're trying to meet. So you're trying to be in these ranges. So for this character, you're trying to get your strength to land between 14 and 15, dexterity between 16 and 17, and so on. And then you have craftsmen.
That's your backstory right here is the card. And these are it's very replayable. You draw randomly for these. And so this is double-sided, and then there's a lot of backstories.
These represent where you want dice to be. So you're going to get points at the end of the game if you have a white die there, a blue die there, green, and so on. And then
you have your alignment card here. Yes. And this is kind of where you align in your, for this one, this halfling is a rebel. Again, there's cards that you choose randomly. You have different ones each time. So depending on the cards that you choose, there's arrows when you pick them up, and there's arrows when you use them. And that will move around this little cube, and then you'll either get negative points or positive points at the end of the game.
Right. So the theme of this game is basically you're building your character, which is a warrior. So there is, in themes that may be considered questionable, you're building someone who is going to go into battle. You are building, there's some, in the story and stuff, there's some built-in violence, very mild. There's no violent storytelling or anything like that, but it is wrapped around you're building a character who is probably going to go into battle.
You're not actually battling. The whole point of this game is you're just developing your character. So at the end of the game, you have a character, but you haven't actually gone into battle. Some of the cards, though, there's a few questionable cards as far as just artwork. Yeah. On the cards, it doesn't talk about you battling at all, but the cards show that there either has been a battle. I think one of the cards, she is wiping blood off of her sword.
These were the 4 cards that we considered questionable.
And this is in the base game.
So this is the Cure Wounds card. There's some blood in that one. The Reckless card has
been into battle and been rather reckless.
Some stuff has gone on there.
He's got a couple of arrows.
He's got arrows.
On his shoulder blade.
The Cunning, this is the one that she was talking about where they're wiping blood off of the blade. And then the Knowledge, there's a hand reaching for a skull. And
again,
appears to be some sort of probably cult figure, something like that. It doesn't go into anything about cult or religion or anything like that.
But it may be implied on the art, and so we just want you to know that.
And there's some things in some of the skill cards that may either imply violence, imply some sort of cult or spirituality, things like that, wizards and stuff like that. So there is magic, there is all that, but you're not going into a deep casting spells and things like that. You may gain the ability to cast a spell, but it's not like a role player game where you're actually going
and doing it
and casting spells and having to get into detail about what the spell does and fighting and violence and things like that. So
exactly.
It's all of that is implied but not gone into detail. Again, artwork is
it's gorgeous.
It's gorgeous.
I love the artwork.
For the most part, in weapons, lock picking, and this guy is obviously a warrior. He's going into battle, but it's not. So again, we went through, and these were the 4 cards that jumped out as us as even you may want to just know that they're in the deck.
And they don't faze our kids, and our kids are fairly sensitive to violence and things like that, and they didn't even ask them if there were any cards that stuck out to them, and they said no. So I had to go and find them myself. That might be questionable. They didn't face them at all. But that was just our kids.
And then the different characters in the game, you have the halfling, and then there's a dragon.
And these are double-sided.
There's a dwarf. There's elves. There's
a human.
Yeah, there's a human. There's an orc. So again, your typical standard fantasy creatures. That's the theme of the game. As far as language dependence goes,
it's fairly language dependent. Each card it's not repetitive. There are very unique information on each card. The good thing about this, though, is everything is on the table. So for Peyton, who's still struggling to read, we put all the marketplace cards out, and every time we put a new marketplace cards out, I would read through and tell him what they did and how it would apply to his character. That was actually good for everyone, though, because then everyone kind of understood, and if anyone had questions, especially for the first few times that we played, we could talk through how that would apply. So it worked well. I didn't feel like that was a struggle at all. Sometimes if he had maybe gotten a trait or a skill, he would need to be reminded of what that would do in the rounds ahead.
And the language dependence is really, it's isolated for the most, as far as the gameplay, it's isolated to the cards. So you don't have to, and the core of the game is rolling the dice and putting them here to build your character. So there's no language dependence with the dice. There's no language dependence in the character building, but you do get traits and you get armor and you get skills and things like that. So you do need to be able to either read or just remember what the cards do.
But then it is all open, right. Just having information. There's no hidden information. So you can always step in and help a struggling reader. Right.
As far as memory goes, even though I just said you have to remember what cards do, there's not any memory as far as like you need to remember what happened a few rounds ago in order to, or you don't have to remember that, okay, these cards are out there hidden somewhere and they're going to come back at some point. There's no ongoing memory in the game. And anything that you would need to keep an eye on is all open. The cards are all face up the whole game.
You just do need to be aware of, especially if you've got a group of skills that you can use each round. If maybe you're ending the round, you guys are about to step into the next one. If you're like, oh crud, I forgot to use this one. It can be you can either be lenient and be like, okay, we'll use it quick because we're stepping into the next one. Right. So those type of things. Memory, really, just being aware is more the memory of that.
And we'll talk about that more in a second because that really falls into the complexity of the game.
That's true.
As far as math, obviously you're adding dice. It's basic addition and subtraction, but there is a lot of it. Like the whole game is adding or subtracting dice and numbers from dice. There's no multiplication, no division, and all of the math is just the faces of the dice and then some other things.
Well, like in some of these, like you have these dice here, and then when you're adding up, it's actually -2 of what's here. Right. This one is +2 of what's here. And then you also have some cards that it's like, okay, during the skill, if you want to use the skill, you can add or subtract on one dice each turn or something like that. And so you do that, and that would change the sum value, which would change this. So there's that type of thing, that type of math.
But the math it's addition and subtraction. It's mostly oriented around the dice, but it is there, and it is a really core part of the game.
Yeah.
So if you're playing with a child that can't add or subtract, they're going to have a really hard time. They're probably not going to get the game. They're probably not going to enjoy it.
They're not going to have fun.
They're not going to have fun, and they're not going to know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Like you need to be able to know, okay, I need 18 in my concentration, so I have to have 3 6s here. Like they need to understand those concepts. Just basic math. So
I mean, honestly, if you have a child that's struggling in that, this is probably not going to be a game for them anyway. It's more complex than just the fact that you're adding and subtracting. There's so much more to it than that.
Yeah, and even reading would be a little bit of a disqualifier, not completely, because you can still, the cards are open information, but math definitely. If your kids are struggling in math and with just basic addition and subtraction, I would say that probably, and we don't do a whole lot of definitive statements, but that would probably be something to at least wait on this game because it's just going to cause frustration. And then the next thing we want to talk about is the strategy and complexity of the game.
Yeah.
There's a lot going
on. I mean, you've got you're placing your dice here each round. You're drafting those. But there's also, when you're pulling up your cards, you've got them in place. You've got your weapons, your armory, your traits, and your skills, and all those happen and do different things at the same time as you're trying to satisfy your class and your backstory and your alignment. There's just a lot going on at the same time.
So when you score, it's your attributes, you have your class, you have your alignment card, you have your backstory, you have your armor, and then you have your trait cards. Mm-hmm. So you have to keep in mind as you're going, remember the trait cards are going to move your alignment card. So when you pick a trait card, it might move your alignment card to somewhere you don't want it. When you have your wisdom over here, you can move your alignment square around when you place something in the wisdom. When you have your armor, it builds on each other. So the more armor you have of the same color, the more valuable that is at the end of the game.
And individually, each element is very simple.
Yeah, I think that's what we came to is compartmentalized. No single element is that complex. There's just a lot of different elements.
There's a lot going on. So, I mean, there's just a lot of strategy involved, because you can play it different each game. You can be like, okay, this time I'm going to prioritize this element of it and see how that works. That's something that Jared loves doing, is he's just playing with each different role. He's trying different things to see what works best. There's just so much replayability with the strategy involved in this, which makes it a lot of fun, but it can also make it a little complicated to the younger players. And
we asked Peyton after we played what he thought about it and what he struggled with. And his biggest struggle was not the cards, surprisingly. His biggest struggle was in the first game, he didn't really understand how the dice scored. He didn't understand what he was doing with the dice. It just didn't click. But after he got through a game and after he scored
understood the colors with the backstory. You're matching colors here with the places. He got that. But as far as what was going on here with the class ranking, that he struggled with.
It just didn't click. So, but after he scored it, after he saw how everything worked, he ended up beating Allison.
He did.
In his first game. But it clicked now. And he said if he, in his next game, he understands that. And he enjoyed it. Even though he didn't fully understand that, he still enjoyed the game. But he did struggle with just piecing everything together and fully understanding how all the different aspects work. Yep. There's just a lot. Even as an adult, there's a lot going on of saying this is going to affect this and is going to affect this. And
I've made mistakes playing, and it cost me in the end because I didn't catch something, and so it cost me in the end. But it's okay. It didn't deter me from enjoying the game. Definitely doesn't deter Jared from enjoying the game.
And then downtime, there's not a whole lot. I think at the beginning of each round, you're going to lay out the marketplace cards, and then everyone's going to go through those and see those. But by the time you get to drawing those, you should know which one you're going to get, because ideally, the dice that you draw is going to affect which marketplace card you get, which does go back to complexity. Like when you're drawing the dice, you need to be able to think through, okay, I'm going to take a lower dice because that card is really going to help me. There's a lot
and there's also different skills you could get that it's like, even if I draw a low dice, I know that next turn I can flip it all the way over and it'll end up being a higher dice. Like there's a lot of different ways you can decide to do that. And downtime, you need to process that, so that might add into the downtime is just you thinking through your strategy when you're looking at the marketplace cards.
But once I draft my dice here, Allison can go and start and pick her dice while I'm figuring out where I want to put it and how I want to place it. So it's not everyone has to do their entire turn and then wait for the next person. It moves pretty quick, and you're doing a lot while other players are doing their turn.
That's true. It plays pretty quick, even though there are a lot of rounds. Just because of how it's like, okay, you all do this, then you do this. Okay, next round, then you do it is fairly quick, but there are quite a few rounds because you do have each round. You're just adding one dice.
Right.
So
and you do start with
depending on the players, you start with, I think we started with 6 with 3 players.
Yeah.
I think 7 with 2. I can't really remember right off.
So you do start with some dice in. So you're not you're not doing 18 full rounds to do it. And you can make a shorter game by starting with more dice.
Right, you can. So as far as like confrontation goes, there's not any like direct confrontation. You're not battling it out.
Right. But there are opportunities for kind of some take that moments. Yeah. So with the armor, the more of the same color armor you get, the more you score at the end of the game. But when you're drafting from the marketplace, you have the opportunity, if you don't want to buy a card, you can burn a card, or you can discard a card and get coins for it. So,
and if I see that you're collecting that and I don't need any other cards, I could be cutthroat and be like, well, I'm just going to burn this card even though I know you're wanting it.
So this one would add to this set of armor because it's red, and it would give me more points at the end of the game. So she might say, okay, I'm just going to take this card and discard it, and then it's gone.
Yeah. Once this card's gone.
Yeah. So there is an opportunity to kind of be cutthroat, to kind of do things to hinder the other players.
Or if I needed this blue, this for blue, and then he took it not even realizing it. And it's like, oh, I wanted
so
that.
There are a lot of those opportunities of like, oh, I needed that dice, and you took it, whether you're being mean or not, whether you're intentionally trying to do something like to hinder the other player. There's a lot of those moments where it's like, okay, I really needed that card, or I needed like.
And it can be so it's more, instead of it being like confrontation, it's more just frustration. There can be some frustration involved in that because you're trying to win.
Right.
But
there's indirect confrontation. There's you're not fighting the other people. You're not attacking the other people.
Right.
And then as far as scoring and winning goes, you have no idea who's going to win until the end of the game. And even if you think you're doing really good, you may not be doing really good.
Compared to someone else.
I would say it would take a lot of energy, a lot of mental energy and focus to be tracking your actual score.
Now, if you played this like 20 times, you kind of have a better idea.
Right.
I think we've played this I've played this 5 times now, and I messed up playing last time.
Right.
Because I miscalculated something.
Now, you do go through, and you obviously know how you're doing here because you're adding up there. But then you also have, it's not that you don't know how you're doing, it's just knowing what your score is. So There's
so many different ways to score.
So you know which dice you have in the right place, but you're not looking at this and thinking, okay, that's 6 points, and this is how, like, it's just, you have to get to the end of the game and then step back and look at everything and add up your score before you, I think, really have a good idea of not necessarily whether you're doing good or bad, but what your score is going to be.
What I really like on the player boards, though, is at the end of the game, it has a step-by-step of what you add up first, which makes it really, it's like, okay, first you add this, okay, then you do this, and then you do that. Like, it makes it easy to just end the game and add your score up. You also get on the back of your player sequence, you have this, and so you take this and you add up as you go. So it makes it easy at the end to kind of keep track of your score, but you don't have to worry about that until the end of the game.
And after all that's done, there is one clear winner, or there's a tie, and there's some tiebreakers in the rule book. But you win based on the number of points that you get. And it is a clear cut. The scoring is very clear cut. There's just a lot of things to score. There's a lot of different opportunities to gain points. But at the end of the game, whoever has the highest score does win. So the actual winning or tying for winning is very, very clear. There's not any gray areas to who the winner is. It's just, again, it goes back to the complexity. There's a lot going on. So as far as all that, and again, it is a really good game. It's a really fun game. It is just, if you have a child that struggles with math, it's probably not going to be a good one to start with. Maybe wait until they have a little bit better grasp of it. If you have a child that is learning math and engaging in that and locking in those principles, it's a great game because it is very basic math.
That adding and subtracting.
So as far as like addition tables and stuff, it's great for that. It's great for doing that, but the overall complexity of the game, they may or may not click with.
Yeah.
I will say something that's been really cool about this game is this game has sparked Jared's imagination unlike any other game that we have played. Like the first game that he played, he came and got my phone and wanted to be like, hey, let me go. I need to go take a video so I can tell you about my character.
It was so good. And if you watch our Instagram, I know you've seen all the times he's played and just how involved he is in this. He's got an Excel spreadsheet where he keeps track of all the traits and stuff. He loves this game and loves the characters and loves that he is building on the characters and writing stories.
And what's cool is you can, as I understand, Role Player Adventures, which was kickstarted last spring and will be coming out this spring, you'll be able to take characters that you build in Role Player if you want to and move them into Role Player and use them in Role Player Adventures. So Jared's, that's why he's keeping that spreadsheet so he can take his character that he built and use them in Role Player Adventures. He has written backstories for his characters that he's done. He has a backstory for one of his orc characters about how they met a guy like 7 years ago that gave him a sword and got him into sword fighting, and that's why he needs more strength and dexterity. Like it has sparked something in his brain. It clicked with something just to drive him to build out these characters. It's been really fun to watch. Like we love seeing that imagination come to life.
And I'm on the other end. The first time we played this game, I loved it. I was the elf and I developed a really cool just person. And then the game was over.
Yeah.
And I didn't win, but I had this and then I was like, okay, well, I want to take it on an adventure now. I've got this awesome role and the game is over. And so both Jared and Daniel were like, well, that's why there's this role player adventure game. I was like, oh yeah. And so that made me even more excited.
So overall, again, our goal here is not to really answer the question of can kids play. It's to inform you so that you can make that decision.
Yep.
But I would say, unless you have, for 7 or 8, unless they are really adept at gaming, unless they play a lot of games and really understand kind of the victory point kind of mechanic and just how cards impact things, and unless they really understand those mechanics, it's probably going to be more frustrating than fun.
Yeah.
Jared is 11. He plays it great. He loves it. Peyton, if we didn't play as many games as we do, and if we didn't, if we weren't able to walk him through it and have that experience, it would probably be a lot more frustrating. So if you're looking to get into gaming with a 6 or a 7-year-old, and you're looking to get into gaming also, and this is one of the first games you get, it may be a little advanced for that.
Right.
I think the box is 10 and up, but it's, so that is really a lot of games, 10 and up, kind of can move down a little bit.
Depending on how often you play and what kind of games you play. And like you said, for us, I mean, we've been playing heavier weighted games with Peyton since he was 6, almost 7. So he's been playing and understands mechanics a little bit more. He's a little bit more fluent in them and just how the strategies go. So it was easier for him to pick that up. But for kids that aren't used to that, this may be a little heavy for them. So you may want to wait until they're about 9 or 10.
Yeah, this is one of those that could cause more frustration. Again,
we love the game.
If the game clicks, not at all. I want to be very clear about that. It's finding that line where the complexity is where they can wrap their mind around the complexity and understand it and get all of that so that they can enjoy the game. If you can understand all of that, it is a fantastic game. Highly recommend it. But I would be...
you just don't want to have them start the game and be frustrated with it and not want to go back to it. That's basically what we're saying.
Yes. So as long as you feel like your kids can handle it and it's a good fit, it is a fantastic game. It is incredibly replayable. There's so many different characters, cards. There's so many different ways to play it. There's some variants. It works great as a solo game. And it's a very versatile game. Yeah. Can't say enough about it.
We really enjoy it.
It is a fantastic game.
Now, if Jared was up here he would tell us all the other things that we need to tell about the game, and I'm sure he will have a video at some point out there explaining all he loves about this game. It's just one of those games for him.
So our goals with these videos, again, is not to really answer that question of whether or not your kids can play it, because we don't know your kids.
I want you to answer that question.
Right. We want to give you the information you need to answer that question for yourself, because we understand games are an investment. Some games are a big investment. Some games are a smaller investment. But if you find a game that's a hit with your family, it's totally worth it.
Yeah.
It's so great. And so if you have any other games that you're interested in, if you have games that you would like us to break down this way for you, definitely leave us a comment, please. We would love to hear those suggestions and be able to help you make those decisions. So until next time, just be sure to hit that subscribe button right here.
And watch some of our other videos right over here.
We'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.